What's up, math fans? Welcome to the advanced notes over the vertex, focus, and directrix of a parabola. So, to save time in this video, I have everything solved out ahead of time. I'm just going to walk you through my process. Otherwise, it would be a very lengthy video. To start things off, let's talk about what is the focus and what is the directrix. So the focus is a point that lies on the axis of symmetry. You'll recall that the axis of symmetry is an imaginary line that runs through the vertex of a parabola, cutting it in half, right? And it is an imaginary line, so the focus is like an imaginary point on that line. But the distance from the focus to the vertex is the same distance from the vertex to the directrix. And so the directrix is an imaginary line that runs perpendicular through the axis of symmetry. Okay, and it's like below or it's separated from the parabola itself. Okay, so if you know where these two pieces of information are, then you can come up with the equation of the parabola that relates to the focus and the directrix, which is basically what we're going to do in this video. So here we have, I call these like vertical parabolas. They open up or down. And here we have, next to it, we have parabolas that I'll just call horizontal parabolas. They go sideways. Um, and they're basically the same set of formulas, except the ones that are opening up or down, your vertical parabolas, they're all y equals, right? That's your typical quadratic function, or typical any function really starts with y equals, right? But if you turn it on its side, then the y equals becomes x equals. So rather than say y equals something something x squared, it's now saying x equals something something y squared, okay? That's the main difference between these formulas, all right? Um, let's talk about a little bit about what's going on in these formulas. If you look at the equation of the quadratic function is very, very similar to the equation of a quadratic function when in vertex form. That's where it said y equals a times x minus h squared plus k, right? So basically, that a term is now gone, and in place of it is this 1 over 4p, okay? So let's talk about the significance of this p-value. This p-value is tied to the focus, and it's also tied to the directrix, right? So if you're able to find this p-value, then finding out the other pieces of information like writing the function or locating the focus or directrix is a lot easier, okay? So you'll recall from the vertex form that the vertex is at h comma k, right? So that's still true here. Any parabola that's opening up or down, the vertex is at h comma k, okay? So you see an h in the formula, you see a k in the formula. That's talking about the x coordinate and the y coordinate of your vertex respectively, okay? So you see that pop up in the focus, and then you see the letter K pop up in your directrix. So if you were to turn it on its side, the H and the K flip in the formula just like the X and the Y did. Your vertex is still at HK, right? But you plug in the letters differently, right? K then H. And if you look at the focus, it says H plus P comma K, but here it's H comma K plus P, right? You added the P to the Y coordinate when it was a Y equals equation, and now you're going to add the P to the X coordinate when it's an X equals equation. And then when you look at the directrix, X equals H minus P, then you look at the directrix for y equals parabola and it's k minus p. So you're still minusing p or adding p in the focus or directrix, but what coordinate or what letter it corresponds with is different, whether it opens up or down or left or right, okay? And then lastly, that p-value tells you which way your graph is going to open up. So if you have a positive p-value and you have we'll say a horizontal parabola, then it's going to open to the right. Because if you think about the number line, moving to the right is a positive direction. Then if you have a negative p, you're going to move to the left, like the negative direction on a number line. And similarly, if p is positive, your graph will open upwards. And then if p is negative, it'll open downwards. Okay, right? So your positive directions are up or to the right, and your negative directions are down or to the left. Okay, so in these examples, I'm going to determine the equation when given the focus, the vertex and directrix. I'm going to also identify the focus and axis of symmetry, and I'm also going to identify what direction the parabola is opening. Okay, so here I was given the vertex is at 2, 4, and the directrix is at y equals 6. Right off the bat, I label my vertex HK, right? So every time I see H and K in these formulas, I'm going to plug in a 2 and a 4 respectively, okay? And then I notice that the directrix says y equals. So if your directrix is y equals, then I'm looking at a parabola that opens up or down, because if the directrix was x equals, I'd be looking at a parabola that opens left or right, okay? So I look at the directrix formula, it says y equals k minus p, and so I rewrote it here, y equals k minus p. And so all I know is that y equals 6. So I wrote 6 equals, let's see here, well, k was 4, right? So 4 minus p. So 4 minus some number equals 6. Well, if you can't figure it out in your head, just solve it algebraically, right? I know I can minus 4 to the other side. That will cancel this out. And then that would give me 6 minus 4 is 2. 2 is equal to negative p. So I would have to flip that sign, right? Or divide by -1, if you will. If you want to get rid of a negative, you can divide by -1, giving you p equals -2. Okay, so now I know my h is 2, my k is 4, and my p is -2. All right, so the next thing I did was I made note that the parabola is going to open down, because I had a negative p-value and I already knew it was going up or down based off of that y equals in the directrix. Okay, and then I'm just going to plug everything else into the formulas. Okay, so my equation formula is y equals 1 over 4p, so 1 over 4 times -2 is going to make -1 over 8. And then it says x minus h. Well, h was 2. Here's 2, and then so x minus 2 squared plus k. K was positive 4, plus 4. So there's my equation of my parabola, okay? I need to figure out where my axis of symmetry and my focus were. So your formula for your axis of symmetry is just x equals h. I wrote it right here. It's x equals h when you have a parabola opening up or down, and then it's y equals k when you have a parabola that's opening left or right. So anyway, back to this. My axis of symmetry, well, h was 2, so I just say x equals 2. Okay, and then my focus, h comma k plus p. So h was 2, k was 4, p was -2, so 4 plus -2 is the same thing as 4 minus 2, which is 2. So my focus is at 2 comma 2. So that's everything about example 1. On example 2, I wasn't given anything that literally said x equals or y equals, but you'll notice that I had the same y coordinate, okay? It was 6, okay? So if I have the same y coordinate, if I have that in common, I'm going to have a parabola that opens left or right. And here's how I know that. The vertex is always h comma k. Okay, so you could label this h comma k no matter what, right? But then it says the focus is at -9, 6. So I see they're both 6. So if you look at this focus is h plus p comma k, all right? And so if my vertex was h comma k, and the focus is h plus p, that value will be different. But the second part of it, just k, should be exactly the same. Because if you look over here, the if it was a parabola opening up or down, the x coordinate would be the same because it's just h. And then the y coordinate would be different because you're adding that p value to it. So I hope that makes sense. You have to pay attention to that detail. All right. So my h is -3, my k is 6, And then all I know right now is that h plus p is making -9, okay? So I know my h is -3, so I'm going to write -9 equals -3 plus p. And so I can add 3 to the other side. -9 plus 3 is -6. So my p is -6, okay? So I previously established that we're dealing with a left or right horizontal parabola. And so since p is negative, that means it's going to open leftwards, okay? And so let's move on to the equation, I guess, right? Here's my formula. X equals 1 over 4p. P is -6. So 1 times 4 times -6 is -24. So I have x equals -1 over 24. And then it says y minus k squared. K was +6, right? So you're minusing +6, just y minus 6, right? Squared, and then plus h, and h was -3. You don't have to write plus -3, you can just write -3. So that's all there is to say about the equation. Move on to the axis of symmetry. It's y equals k was 6, that's all there is there. And then the directrix, x equals h minus p. So my h was -3 and my p was -6. So if you're minusing a negative, it's the same thing as adding. So -3 plus 6 is +3. So my equation for my directrix is x equals 3. So for example 3, I have the directrix is y equals -14. That immediately tells me, hey, you have a parabola that's going to open up or down, okay? And then your focus is at -2, comma 10. So your directrix tells you what k minus p is, okay? So we don't know specifically what k or p is just from this negative information. I just know -14 is going to equal whatever k minus p is, okay? And then my focus says h comma k plus p for the y equals equations. So all I know for sure is that h is -2. The y coordinate tells me that 10 is going to equal k plus p. So I wrote here, let's make a system of equations and solve, because we both have the same letters in common, a k and a p. So if I make a system of equations, I know I can just add these two equations together, because if I do, I have one that's minusing p and one that's adding p. Well, those would just cancel each other out. That would just give me -14 plus 10 is -4, and k plus k is 2k. So divide both sides by 2, and -4 divided by 2 is -2. So k is -2. All right, so now I know my h, and now I know my k. I just need to figure out what my p is. To figure out your p, you could just plug in that k value into either one of your equations. You should get the same thing. It doesn't matter which one you plug in. So I went ahead and I just plugged it into both, demonstrating that you are indeed going to get the same thing. If you don't, then you made a mistake when you solved for k. So when I plugged it in into the -14 equals k minus p, -2 minus p, I would add 2 to the other side, and I would get -12 equals -p, so therefore +12 equals +p. And then if you plugged it into 10 equals k plus p, well, substitute -2 in for k, then plus it over to the other side. 10 plus 2 is 12. 12 equals p, so it doesn't really matter, right? I know that p is positive, and I knew that my equation was going to be up or down because the directrix was given to me as y equals. So now that I have a positive p, I can tell you for sure that this is a parabola that's going to open upwards, okay? So once you know your k and your p and your h, k, and p, just plug it into everything else that you don't know yet. Like, I don't know my equation yet, okay? Well, p is 12, so 1 over 4 times 12, it becomes 1 over 48. X minus h, well, h was -2, so if you minus -2, then it becomes x plus 2 squared, and then plus k was -2, so I just tack on the -2 at the end there. So that's your equation of your parabola. Your axis of symmetry, x equals h, cool, h was -2. And then your vertex, h comma k, we didn't know where the vertex was exactly, but h was -2, k was -2, so that's where my vertex is. All right, so that's everything to know about number 3. My final example here, I give you the focus and the directrix. So here your directrix says x equals. So that means, hey, your parabola is going to open up left or right, okay? So I'm going to use all the horizontal formulas here, right? Everything that's x equals. For the focus, I'll use the formula where the p is in the x coordinate. So my focus little formula is h plus p comma k, right? So 7 equals h plus p, all right? And then I know k is -1. And then I have my directrix. That formula is h minus p. So I don't know what p is yet, right? And I don't know what h is yet. All I really know is that k is -1. So this is just like the previous example. I can make a system of equations. I know that the directrix is x equals 1, so 1 equals h minus p. I know that the focus is 7 in the x coordinate, and that's figured out by doing h plus p. So I stack those on top of each other. 7 equals h plus p, 1 equals h minus p. And just like the previous example, I see that the p's are opposite signs, so I don't have to really do any sort of hard work here. I just have to add these two equations together. 7 plus 1 is 8, h plus h is 2h, and p minus p would go away. So divide both sides by 2, and I get that h equals 4. And then I can plug it back into either one of these two original equations and figure out what my p-value is. Again, you should get the same answer twice if you decide to plug it into both of them. It's not really necessary, but just to illustrate that you get the same answer, I plugged it into both. Okay? If you do plug it into both and you get a different answer, that should just let you know that you made a mistake when you were solving for h. So anyway, if 7 equals h plus p and h is 4, then 4 plus 3 would equal 7, right? So p must equal 3. And then if I plugged it into the other one, 1 equals h minus p, 1 equals 4 minus p. Well, I know 4 minus 3 is 1. So either way you plug it in, you get p equals 3. Okay, so I have a positive p-value, and I previously established that the parabola is going to be a horizontal one opening left or right. Well, now that I know it's positive, I know it's going to open to the right. Okay, so the next thing I did was I made my equation. So here's my formula for the equation. X equals 1 over 4p. P is 3, so 1 over 4 times 3 turns into 1 over 12. And it says y minus k squared. K was -1, so if you minus a -1, it turns into +1. And then add h at the end. H was that positive 4, so it ends with +4. Okay? And then my axis of symmetry, that formula is just y equals k. Well, k was -1, so that's where the axis of symmetry is. And then my vertex is at h comma k. I already knew that k was at -1, then I figured out that h was 4, so it's at 4, -1. And yeah, those are basically the questions I'm going to ask you on your assignments. Where's the focus? Where's the directrix? Where's the axis of symmetry? What's the equation? What's the p-value? What direction is it going to open up, down, left, or right? So with all that being said, thank you for watching. Hope you learned something, and goodbye.